we have so much to be grateful for amidst this terrible time, and that certainly is in the form of the men and women who are out there working every day, putting their lives on the line, the first responders, the men and women in the healthcare profession, our nurses, our doctors, our technicians in the hospitals and across the city. And we have so much to be thankful for them, and we should all keep that in mind. And also, as we know, this epidemic has hit Staten Island very hard. We've had close to 800 deaths here, and thousands of people have been taken ill. So I hope that you and your family are staying safe and healthy, and the prescriptions of social distancing and keeping the hands clean and not touching the face are very important. And despite all the political rhetoric out there, the evidence shows that we have to keep it up, and we're doing that here in the district attorney's office. We have about 85% of the people working from home right now, working remotely. Yet at the same time, we are here working in partnership with the great men and women of the police department, doing our best to keep the community of Staten Island safe. We're doing arraignments by video conference and special proceedings, and we'll soon be doing indictment proceedings live as well. So the criminal justice system is working, is functioning in a way that I'm very proud of, and I'm very proud of the men and women of my office. As I said, our partners, the police department, the court officers, the clerks, and everyone who is doing their duties as essential workers. Now, unfortunately, even in difficult times like these, when we should all be rallying towards one cause, there are people out there who will take advantage of this situation. The criminal element has not stopped its activities. We see that the crime rates in many areas and many categories have remained consistent, if not increased. And that's why we want to talk to you today about ways that we can help you keep your business and yourself safe and keep crime numbers down. Because in our office, we believe more than anything that crime prevention is as important, if not more important, than prosecution of crime. Now, there are a few areas that we want to focus on. One is sort of physical crime, if you will, burglaries and the space and the physical nature of your offices and your businesses. We want to keep them free from burglaries, car theft, and we're going to have Deputy Inspector Corey come and speak to us from the police department about crime prevention and that physical aspect, if you will. Then there's also cybercrime and fraud, and the best way to prevent that is listening to the tips that you'll get from our Economics Crime Bureau, as well as our partners here today, Linda Baran from the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce, and Steve Grillo from the SIEDC, who will talk to you about some things that you can do. When I came into office just over 4 years ago, I had promised to and fulfilled that promise of establishing a freestanding economic crimes bureau here in the office. And I'm proud to say that that bureau now is staffed with 6 assistant district attorneys, the bureau chief and deputy bureau chief, who you'll meet in a few minutes, as well as the other assistants. We also have a CPA on staff. We have a forensic accountant. We have a team of analysts, and they have become leaders in the state of New York by any metric you can look at. We're very proud of the fact that they lead the state in recovering money for the state in cases involving tax fraud and unemployment insurance fraud, workers' compensation fraud, and working with individual victims here on Staten Island, whether it was through employee theft, fraud, cyber theft, or physical burglary or grand larceny auto. They're doing a great job, and you're going to hear from them in a few minutes with some tips, as well as the inner workings of that bureau. You should know that the victims of crime are where we focus our efforts in this office every day. Unfortunately, there's too much rhetoric across the city and state under the rubric of so-called criminal justice reform and bail reform. And we have kept the focus on the victims. We fight for the victims, and we do that every day. One of the things that we've been unable to do is restore bail in cases of commercial burglary. The bail reform efforts have made our jobs much more difficult, and someone can now burgle your premises, be arraigned, and they'll be released again and put out on the street. And we continue to see recidivism is very high in this area. So when you run into your state elected officials, please try to prevail upon them that commercial burglary should be one of the crimes that's restored to the category under which we can ask for bail. But that's the end of my infomercial in that regard for you this morning. I've been, most of you know me as a former councilman and congressman and now as district attorney. But for 15 years of my life, I was a small business owner. I had a law firm over in West Brighton with a dozen employees, trying to figure out how to make payroll, how to pay my taxes, how to pay my workers' compensation insurance, how to meet the bottom line. And so I understand what you go through every day, but you should also know that we appreciate you incredibly because you are really the backbone of the economic vitality of this community of Staten Island. And without you, we don't know where we would be. So we want to make sure that you continue to prosper and flourish even in these very difficult times. And that's why we want to bring this program to you to help you to do that.
When you're running a business, you really shouldn't have one person who takes the cash, takes the checks, enters all the information into QuickBooks, and then goes to the bank and makes the deposits, and then also does the annual fiscal review. That's a recipe for disaster in your company. You should have separate people handling separate things with your business, specifically with the money and the accounting. That way, you have safeguards in place, and you have different people who could, checks and balances, and they could say, hey, wait a second, we took in $10,000 this month, but according to the records in QuickBooks, it says $8,000. There's money missing. A lot of times, as I said, 50% of the employers do not recover the money that was taken from their employees. Now, that's a variety of factors. Sometimes they know the person for many years, they've become friends, so they don't want to report it, and they just let them go. But in cases where you'd like to recoup the money, as DA McMahon stated earlier, we have analysts, forensic accountants, we have CPAs, we have a whole team of prosecutors and analysts who, if you tell us early enough, there is a possibility we can get your money back. We have abilities to freeze people's bank accounts or seize their assets, and there is a possibility that we can get your money back. But we can only really do that if you report to the police or to my office as quick as you discover that the money was taken. And another way for you to do that is check your records every month. You have credit cards, you check every month. If you have a business, you should be checking the money every single month. And I think now ADA Gregg Brown, Deputy Chief, he's going to talk to you a little bit about phishing scams and some internet scams that you may fall prey to.
Today, it seems that as people are working from home, scammers have shifted to more of an online approach. It already existed before that, but it's just an easy way for them to target businesses which are still open. So there's really three things that we have seen, which already, like I said, they already existed before the epidemic, but the rate at which they're happening has increased. We have a lot of open investigations into them now. So the first is your common phishing email scam. It's the sort of thing where you get an email either personally or to your business from the IRS about your refund or anything regarding to business tax returns, whatever it is. And you have to know that these entities will never actually ask you for EINs or social security numbers or anything like that legitimately. What they do is they send out the same email to say 10,000 recipients, and they're only really looking to get 2 or 3 people to click the link and then type in personal information. And from there, they can steal from your business pretty easily. They'll get bank account numbers, routing numbers, and things like that. So you have to beware the suspicious email as always. But more specifically than that one, what I've seen a lot these days is it's an email address scam. You've probably seen it in the context of closings for homes, you're always warned not to wire money without actually speaking to the recipient of the wire. That's been happening more with regard to businesses. What scammers have been doing recently, since we've shifted to a working from home approach, it's very easy to get someone's email address. And so what they do is they'll find out the email address of, say, the CEO or the president or the owner of the company. And what they'll do is they'll create an email address that's just one digit off. So for instance, my name is Gregg, or my email address, I should say, is greg.brown@rcda.nyc.gov. They'll make it greg.brown with an E at rcda.nyc.gov, so that someone who just looked at the email quickly would think that it's from me, when in reality it's from a scammer. They'll find out as much about the business as they can, employees, shipments, anything that they can find out online, they'll find out. They'll go on social media, they'll find out the names of people's children and where they go to school and whether they've been on vacation recently, so they can make the emails appear as real as possible. And then they'll start having an email conversation with an employee, and they'll eventually reach a point where they'll ask the employee to send money to someone, and it's really just an account that the scammer holds, so that they can get money sent to them and it's gone or wired before the owner of the company ever knew it. And then the other thing that we've seen in this age of more online business as people are working from home is computer repair scams. We see people who have computer issues, they go online to get help with all their, help with platforms like this or Zoom or their business. They need to get up and running from home, and they weren't really prepared to do that before. So eventually they call a computer repair company they find online. They've never actually met anyone from the computer repair company. In reality, the computer repair company is a scammer. The scammer asks for access to the person's computer. And at that point, the scammer would have all of the person's passwords, your business's bank accounts, and everything like that. And in essence, get full control over your business, can wire out money. So we've seen a lot of that going on too. Those are the main scams, which I think are relevant to today in that they have become much more prevalent as people are working from home. Employee theft is always an issue, obviously, but I think more of these computer scams are the things that you're going to see. You're going to get a lot more suspicious emails. You're going to get emails from addresses which are very, very similar to your employees' email addresses, or they'll receive emails from addresses which are very, very similar to yours. And these are all scams designed around getting money sent to some scammer's bank account. And after that, it's too late. Those are difficult cases to prosecute. Often the person isn't in the United States, which means there's nothing we can do, which means the best thing we can do is our prevention on the front end of that by spreading the knowledge that these are the things that scammers are doing during the pandemic because people are working from home.
I wanted to start just about speaking about crime in general. Crime citywide is up slightly, but here in Staten Island, it is down 4% for the year, or down 30 crimes, 712 versus 742. And that's a testament to not only the members of the New York City Police Department here in Staten Island, led by Chief Corey, who is no relation to me, as well as the team here at the District Attorney's Office, and all of you that are in the audience, and all of our business leaders and clergy, and everyone that's viewing this today. So the crimes are up in Staten Island. Robbery is up 79 versus 60, or for 19 or 32%. And GLAs are up 72 versus 50. That's grand larceny autos, which are up 22 or 44%. But citywide, they're up 62%. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Now, burglaries is a concern that people in this audience have, and burglaries here in Staten Island are down for the year. They're 82 versus 87, or down 5.7%. But that being said, when you actually delve into those burglaries and you take a look, they're actually up in the area of businesses because they're down in the residential. And that makes sense with the COVID epidemic, and that in this case, we have families and kids staying home, and we have businesses that are either temporarily closed or operating during different hours. So what are we seeing with burglaries? We're seeing locations such as supermarkets, restaurants, gas stations, small grocers, bodegas, all being burglarized. And they're getting in through different means. They could be, in some cases, sophisticated crews of cutting through rooftops and cutting through next door businesses and things of that nature. But also we just have people throwing bricks through windows, pulling on doors that are possibly not well secured, and things of that nature. So what can you do with your business? Well, first of all, if you are going to your business, checking on it, and you see that there's a sign that it's possibly been burglarized, just remember that those burglars could still be on the premises, and you want to call the police and make sure that they arrive before you go in. If your business has been burglarized, another thing you want to do is ensure that you are safeguarding the crime scene, that you don't touch anything that the burglars may have touched, that you don't move or remove anything that they may have left behind. Sometimes people leave articles of their own clothing, identification, shoes. You never know what somebody might leave behind and what we might be able to get DNA or fingerprints from. Also, your perimeter, just in general, your business should look like somebody is attending to it. There shouldn't be things filled up outside or mail deliveries, packages, and things like that. You want to make sure that your lighting is really good. Right now, I know the DA spoke about having been a small business owner, and we understand that the businesses right now, you're concerned about finances, and it's not easy for you to possibly get new things installed. But something like lighting is a very cheap deterrent, and if you have a well-lit business, both inside and out, it will definitely deter the crime of burglary. Another thing, we've seen people going through sidewalk openings, so you have to make sure that not only your sidewalk opening is locked, but that the frame of them for the doors is secure as well, so somebody can't just pull that open and go in. Doors and locks, your door frames, edge guards for your locks to make sure that somebody can't just easily pry your door open. When I was driving here today, I saw a lot of businesses that had roll-down gates that either didn't have any locks on them at all, some that were open slightly so somebody could actually go underneath them, and also that had very long shackles where somebody could just cut them easily. When you want to have something that's got a hardened steel shackle, that's a small space so that somebody can't easily grip them with a bolt cutter. Additionally, windows need to be protected. We've seen windows left open. We've seen rooftop entries where doors are open on rooftops because somebody doesn't realize somebody's going to get up there. Just not having climbing aids. So if you have a business where you might have ladders or you have sheds covering garbage cans and things like that, anything that can be moved or removed that's a climbing aid, you should actually have that removed or secured. In addition to alarm systems, I have a friend that was burglarized in Manhattan. He has a restaurant. He did not have his alarm system activated because he was having issues with it. If you are having issues with an existing alarm system, you should make sure that it's worked out with the alarm company, that it's fixed. You should be testing your alarms. People pay for alarms, pay for central station alarms, and having no idea that they're actually not operational or they've had trouble with them, so they turn them off. In one of the gas station burglaries here in Staten Island, the gentleman who was called by his alarm company to say, your alarm activated, and he said, oh, don't call the police because I've had numerous activations and it's just a false alarm. Well, in this case, it wasn't a false alarm. So we want you to get those things fixed, make sure that they're working, make sure the alarm company can get in touch with you. Also, video surveillance systems. To make sure that you have a good video surveillance system and actually have cameras on the exterior of your building as well. You want to make sure that those are operational, everything's functioning properly, they're being recorded, that you're recording, we would hope even for as much as 60 days, but at least a minimum of 30 days. That somebody can access that recording if the police have to come and do an investigation, that we don't have to wait to get that video. In addition, make sure that your cameras aren't blocked. So you may have put up new signage or new shelving in your business and not realize that now your camera is no longer having a view of the interior of the business, of the cash register area, of the front entrance, so that you can see actually people coming in and get a full facial view. So those are just some of the things that you can do to safeguard your business. In addition, there is a crime prevention officer in every precinct in the city. If you go on the NYPD website and you look up your precinct, your crime prevention officer's name and phone number is listed there, and your crime prevention officer's email address. You can reach out to your crime prevention officer who can assist you with different methods of securing your business. They can come and do a security survey, and they can even just talk to you over the phone about some issues you may be having. So another thing, we've had some complaints about graffiti. When we look at graffiti in Staten Island, it seems that your complaints for graffiti are down for the year. But we do want to make sure that if you have a graffiti issue, that you know that if there are things left behind, like paint cans or other things that we might be able to get fingerprints off of, that you should not touch those and call the police and safeguard them for the police to come. And then once the police make a report and the photographs are taken and everything, that then you remove the graffiti as soon as possible, because of course we find that graffiti leads to more graffiti if it's left unchecked. So in the issue of grand larceny auto, here in Staten Island, as I said, you're up in grand larceny auto with 72 versus 50 for the year. But what's really disturbing is 31% of those grand larceny autos are because of keys left in the ignition or the vehicles left running. So, PA, would you please? We have a poster that we can have for you, for your business. If you can have those put up at your business, we have them available. Your crime prevention officer has them available. We have a lot of people that are making deliveries, picking up food, that are leaving vehicles running. So thank you, sir. So if you can make sure that you tell your customers not to leave their vehicles running. We in the confines of the 6-7 precinct, we have one location where there have been 6 thefts at one location that's a restaurant. So these 31 out of these 72 vehicle thefts are 100% preventable by just not leaving the vehicles running or not leaving the keys in the vehicle. And sometimes people are leaving their vehicle running and taking the key fobs that they push to start cars, and they think that the car can't be driven away if they have the key fob. But in a lot of cars, that's not true. Somebody can just take that car and drive away. So just please make sure you're removing the keys and you're locking the doors on these vehicles. So another issue that we're having is scams. We still are seeing what we call the family in peril scam. So when you hear that and you say, well, you know, how does that affect me? I'm a business. It's not an issue. This is an issue for everyone. If you have a grandparent, if you have an aunt or uncle, if you have an elderly neighbor, if you have customers coming in that are possibly involved in scams where they're going to your business, whether you're a bank manager and somebody who's 85 years old is in there removing money from the bank so that they can go and pay a scammer, or somebody is doing a bank wire transfer, or you have a business that has a Bitcoin machine and somebody's coming in to make payment to a scammer, or you have a store that sells gift cards and somebody's using gift cards to pay a scammer. All of these are places where you can possibly get involved and stop somebody from being victimized. We are seeing that still multiple people every week in the middle of this pandemic in their 70s, 80s, and 90s are going out to banks, to businesses to buy gift cards, to locations to send money with Bitcoin machines, and also to FedEx and UPS to actually send cash via the mail. And in some cases, they're even meeting with these scammers in person. They're coming to their homes. One woman even got in a car with one. So again, this is everybody's problem. If you can talk to your loved ones, talk to your customers, and we just try to put a stop to this. Another scam that we're having is a stimulus payment scam. We've seen, and I can't really show this to you, but this is an actual email, but it's on our Twitter account, and it was received by a Parks Department employee. I know people in the Queens DA's office got these emails as well, and other people nodding in the background in the room I'm sitting in. So it's just designed so that you click on it and you possibly get your bank account information or other information. All of these things are scams. The only place that you should be going for stimulus questions or any website is just the IRS website, and all that information is on our Twitter account. Another scam that we saw that does affect small businesses is somebody was called and told that their manager had ordered personal protection equipment, and that equipment could not be delivered unless they paid $1,900 up front. That payment was made, and of course, that was a bogus order. It never happened. That information is also on our Twitter account. Another scam that we're having, the last one I'm going to talk about is it's a job scam, and it does affect people on Staten Island. There is a pattern regarding this, and it's seemingly a lot of young people looking for jobs. We have 2 emails, one from that looks like it's from Baruch, which is this one, as well as one that looks like it's from Kingsborough College. They're using real return email addresses that seem to be from the colleges, and they're basically doing job offers. They send you money in the form of a check that you deposit, then they have you use that money to do certain things for the business, and then in turn, that check bounces and you have sent money through a Zelle account or other means, and you're out that money. So again, that's also on our Twitter account. I believe our Twitter account is linked. Yes, it is. It's NYPD CPD, and it's right on the screen. And if anybody needs that information, you can get it to afterwards as well. And I want to thank you very much for your time and anything you can do to assist in our efforts to keep New York City safe. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the District Attorney, Mike McMahon, for inviting the Chamber to be a part of this forum this morning, and also for the insights from the Economic Crime Bureau and also from the Deputy Inspector. Thank you for all of that. I've been asked this morning to talk a little bit about financial security, but I just wanted to, before I go there, I really wanted to just talk about the fact that, you know, organizations like the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce and the Staten Island Economic Development Corporation are there for businesses on Staten Island. And, you know, you heard a lot about scams and a lot about, you know, sources of information and not knowing whether they were actually, you know, real or not. And I do believe that people should know that our organizations, my organization in particular, has been on Staten Island for 125 years, and we are a trusted source. So if you have any questions about anything, you know, in your business and you really don't know where to turn to, please call the Chamber, because we can direct you and we can make sure that you're dealing with reliable people here on Staten Island. To that end, we have companies that do cybersecurity. We have companies that do security in general. We have all kinds of different companies that you can rely on to make sure that, you know, your business is running efficiently and can get your questions answered. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there in the beginning. In regards to financial security, I think, you know, it's important for everybody to know what the landscape is right now for the business community. And I see that some of the people on the call have been on some of our previous webinars and are very familiar with some of the programs that are out there. But as everybody knows, the CARES Act, a second round of funding came through just recently for the payroll protection program. And a lot of people didn't get in initially, and people are trying to access finances. I mean, that program isn't for everybody in particular. It is basically for payroll for the most part, to cover payroll so that you can continue to pay your employees. A lot of the responses that we've gotten are that program isn't necessarily the right program for everyone. So there are other programs. The SBA has an EIDL program as well, and that was really more for operational costs, but it's a loan and it's not a grant. The PPP program can be forgiven, where the EIDL program not necessarily be forgiven. There is a portion they will give you up front as a grant, but you can't take advantage of both programs. So there's a lot of things out there, but what I'm hearing from this is that these programs aren't always a perfect fit. So, what we're trying to do at our organization is really just letting people know what resources are available. There's supposed to be another round of funding coming through from the federal government somewhere towards the end of this month. We're hoping at the Chamber to see more help for rent, mortgage, real estate taxes for local businesses. That's where we're seeing a lot of our members. They don't have the cash flow coming in and they continue to have their expenses. So, we're trying to really just provide information and guidance on that. The one thing I can tell you again, it's all about relationships. So it is making sure that you're talking to your local lender in terms of some of these specific programs that are out there so that you have a reliable source that you're dealing with on that, because you can go online, but you don't know who you're dealing with and you don't have a direct connection. So it's really important to take advantage of, if you have a banking relationship with someone here, talk to them. If you don't, you can talk to the Chamber or the SIEDC. We know many of the banks are involved in our organizations, and we can, right now when banks are closed, sometimes it's hard to reach a body at that bank. So we can help you make those connections. In terms of some of the other things that we're seeing, a lot of the questions that we're getting are around human resources and how to manage employees. People have questions about the emergency paid family leave. They have questions about unemployment insurance, how they relate to one another. Right now, there is an extra $600 through July 31st, where employees, if they're on unemployment, they get that additional money. And in some cases, employees are making more money now than they were when they were actually working for the company. Some of the companies that have taken the PPP loan are trying to bring employees back, and they're having a hard time because employees don't want to come back because they're making more money. A lot of the guidance that we've been given is that, if you have a job offer for them, as they're actively seeking unemployment, they cannot necessarily decline that job. So that can be something that can be reported. I think, in these times, I think one of the things that's going to be really important for employers is how they manage their employees, especially as they come back. And Steve's going to talk a little bit more about the programs, well, I shouldn't say the programs, because we're waiting for guidance from the governor's office on how the state is going to reopen, but some ideas around some of that reopening. But I would just like to say that as employers, be thinking of how you're going to manage your employees coming back in terms of the new world. We see right now how the NYPD is handling social distancing. And I think what's going to happen is a lot of businesses are going to almost become guard keepers. They're going to have to monitor their employees. There's a lot of HIPAA compliance and things like that, privacy concerns that are going to, that businesses are going to have to be aware of. Can I take somebody's temperature? They provide me an attestation saying that, they're okay to work. Can you take a temperature of somebody coming into your business? There's all kinds of different concerns around that. And I think that, smaller employers, don't have the guidance from the big, larger companies. So what I would suggest is that you look to the Chamber of Commerce, and, those are areas where we can get guidance and provide you guidance as you're looking to open up. I really, in terms of everything that's going on, I just really want to say that the Chamber is here to help you. We're here to guide you. There's a lot of questions from the business community. All of the loan and grant programs don't suit everybody. There's a lot of HR questions. Again, it's, if you have connections with a CPA, if you have an attorney, if you have, specific lenders that you're using, make sure that you're using those companies and contacting them. If you don't, reach out to reliable organizations like the Chamber and the SIEDC, and we can be, very helpful to you, especially during this time where businesses have so many things on their mind. They're wondering, where they're going to be, when they're going to be able to open back up. Can they bring their employees back? If I let my employees go, am I going to lose them? So just want you to know that we're here for you. I'm going to turn it over to Steve. And Steve, maybe you can talk a little bit more about what you see in terms of bringing businesses back.
Couldn't be more important. As she said, it's really, really critical that businesses on Staten Island utilize the existing resources that you have in the SIEDC and the Chamber of Commerce. And so we are here to help. I know that's a familiar phrase you hear a lot, but it's true. So certainly utilize the information that's on the screen about social media, email as well. And certainly visit the SIEDC website at siedc.org to sign up for our email list. We have information coming out on a daily basis about COVID and some of the issues and solutions related. So I'm going to be brief. I know that there's a lot of Q&A that we want to get to, but I do want to talk about, what is the essence of this theme of protection? Protection really is about identifying and realizing your vulnerabilities and then reacting to those vulnerabilities. And I think COVID has been an interesting example because the problem is not necessarily just COVID. The problem is what happens when there are similar issues that disrupt business, and that includes potential bioterrorism, other diseases, financial terrorism, storm events. This should be your test run as a business owner to determine how can you prepare and react for these types of issues. And so I want to isolate three particular items: cybersecurity, operations, and then financial security before we move on to the Q&A. The first, at the cyber level, I think, with so many folks working from home, we need to begin preparing ourselves as businesses for the new digital age. And what does that mean? That means making sure that your tech infrastructure is ready and up and running and prepared for a potential quick transition for your entire staff. So what does that mean? Is it something as basic as making sure everyone has computer access, internet access at home, VPN access to access files? It also means, making sure that you can communicate with your customers. That's especially true, I think, on the nonprofit side, where a lot of folks are in the social services end, where you're maybe communicating with children or senior citizens, or those in low-income communities or socially marginalized who may not have access to internet or phone. And so you need to really inventory, who are your customers? Who are you selling to? Who are you serving? And how do they begin communicating with you? Because you certainly don't want to be prepared on one side, right, your internal side, but not be able to communicate with the customers or the folks that you work with. I also think, a huge component of that infrastructure is the security associated with it. And we've heard a lot about different scams today. And certainly, if you are thinking about upgrading or improving your tech infrastructure, you should be working with trusted professionals. And as Linda said, though, there's plenty of resources in the SIEDC and the Chamber to figure out, how do you protect yourself? How do you protect your digital information? How do you accept payments, make payments to vendors? All of those things can be compromised and can be extremely dangerous if you don't have the right infrastructure and security in place. So I think a paramount issue for every business, nonprofit, community group is to think about, how are you preparing your digital platforms going forward? Because I don't think this is the last time we're going to have this type of work from home experience. On the operations side, I think folks in tandem to the tech aspect should also be thinking about physical space changes. Certainly PPE and protective equipment within your office spaces. And SIEDC is going to be putting out a best practices email series soon that's going to talk about this for different business sectors. And I certainly encourage you, again, visit our website at siedc.org and sign up for our email blast list so that you can be included in that email. But, what about how you do business? How much square footage are you currently occupying? Do you need to occupy that amount of office space? Perhaps you should have some of your team working from home more frequently. And could that be a cost savings measure? Something to think about. Business efficiencies in general. I think this is a great time for people to start thinking about, why do you do what you do? Why do you spend how you spend? In showing that there are so many business vulnerabilities, it is a good time to do a bit of a self-audit and say, am I practicing my business efficiently or not? And I think that if you start to turn the microscope back on yourself, it's a good way to consider, are you being as efficient as possible? And I think the final piece of this is, and it's tied with efficiency, is essential services. These types of business shutdowns can and likely will occur over and over again. Hopefully not to this extent, but it is possible. And so when we're talking about tech infrastructure and security, we should also be talking about essential services. What are the bills you have to pay? Who are the vendors you have to work with? Who are the clients that you have to serve? Who's an indispensable piece of your business? Are there redundancies within your organization and cross-training? Making sure that if someone does become ill on the staff, can their work be done by someone else? How adequately prepared are they? And again, it's this sort of turning the microscope back on yourself and thinking about your internal audit. And then finally, on the financial side, and Linda made reference to this, there's so many programs out there. There's so many complicated things in this current environment. You should certainly prioritize a relationship with a nonprofit like SIUDC or the Chamber, or a neighborhood group that can provide these services as well. And make sure that you're using an adequate accountant. I can't tell you how many businesses, especially in Staten Island, where there's so many small retail businesses, small nonprofits, industrial firms that often work in a very informal way in terms of their bookkeeping. This is the time that those businesses become victims to mistakes and fraud. Use this opportunity to build relationships, find good support systems. Think about programs like the Industrial Business Zone program that provides financing for industrial manufacturing and transportation firms through the SIEDC, or the business solution centers that are run by the Department of Small Business Services. Get those contacts in place. Understand that when you do run into an issue, where can you turn? Don't wait for the emergency to happen. Be prepared for it. And I think along those lines, every business today, as you think about what you do and how you do it, think about new vending opportunities as well. I think certainly on the industrial side, we've seen a lot of firms that are now converting to producing PPE and other related medical equipment. It's a great example for every business. Think about the services that you can provide during these unique times. Is there a way to potentially change your business model? Again, I don't have answers for you today because a lot of these questions I'm posing are for you to do a self-exercise of understanding what you do and how you do it and whether you do it well or not. And just because you have a successful business doesn't mean you necessarily have an efficient business. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a business that can rebound from some type of critical problem like this. And so I encourage folks to think about your cybersecurity and your cyber infrastructure, your business operations, your essential services, your redundancy, and your financial security. These are all ways for you to say, maybe I'm not doing business as well or as efficiently or as safely as I could. And I need to correct that, not only to recover from COVID, but to also be prepared for the next potential issue. And so thank you, everyone, for your time today, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of free services available. There's the Small Business Development Centers, which is a part of the College of Staten Island. They're housed there, but they're available. There's also the Business Solution Centers, as Steve alluded to, which is a free service. And you also have the Women's Business Outreach Center, and you have, both the SIEDC and the Chamber. I mean, the Chamber is a membership organization, as is the SIEDC, but currently during this COVID crisis, we are serving a lot of non-members and giving them guidance. And where I am seeing a lot of difficulty is that, sole proprietor, independent contractor who's really having a hard time understanding, even just to apply for that PPP loan. A lot of people don't think that they're eligible, but they may be eligible. It's if they don't need a W-2, they need a specific schedule, and it's how they actually, submit their tax return. And so these free services are available. I would say that, if anybody wants to know where to go, to reach out to me at my organization. My email is on our website. My name is Linda Baran. It's lbaran@sichamber.com. Myself or any of my staff can direct you, but there is a lot of resources out there. I think it's more that people don't know about these things, that they exist.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think everything that Linda mentioned there is certainly a good resource. Additionally, the New York City Department of Small Business Services and the New York City Comptroller's Office have both put out guidance documents that are available on their websites. And I would certainly suggest folks look into the Comptroller's Office website, because there's some really good resources for referencing nonprofit organizations that are providing small loans and micro grants, which, just to cover a month's rent or to cover some credit card bills that have been incurred. That's a great resource as well. So that's on the Comptroller's website. Think about some non-traditional, non-Staten Island based sources, even for just some small loans or small grants.
Yeah, and just some of those there are alternative lenders out there that can be helpful as well. So you don't necessarily have to be, the government program that's being a federal program that's put out does not fit you. There are other resources. There are other small micro lenders that we know about. And as Steve said, I mean, even on our chamber website, we put out things like, Hello Alice and Facebook and all of these other different smaller opportunities. New York Community Trust has a grant program for nonprofits. So it's a matter of just kind of looking for those things. But if you go to these trusted organizations, you certainly can at least find that information on their websites, or, reach out to us directly, and we'll put you in touch.
Yes, the police are responding if they come over as a 1011, as a burglary alarm, if there's a burglary in progress. It comes over as an alarm, though. But one of the things that I recommend is if people have the ability to seek into their businesses and they get notified either from their motion sensor that alerts them or from their central station, like as I said with the gentleman with the gas station, that if you can see into your business and you see that somebody's in there, that you also call the police and say, yes, there is a burglary in progress at my location. Don't just rely on the central station. Because if we get a second call and we have knowledge that there is somebody physically on the premises that the owner can see, that is very helpful, and we will get people there immediately. And it's good information also for officers to have for their safety as well.
Basically, what I would encourage the tenant to do is really speak to the landlord and see if they can negotiate it. Well, some of the landlords I know that we've spoken to have actually allowed some of the tenants to defer. That's not always the case. There is there's some free legal service available through Legal Aid, Bar Association. We have those resources on the Chamber's website. We can refer you to people who you could talk to get specific legal advice. Right now, there's nothing specifically, for the renter. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, some of these programs, I think it has to be done across the board because we do have, commercial tenants that struggle to pay their rent, but we were all, also hearing from the landlords and the property owners, and some of them are small businesses as well, or maybe own a building on a block, and they need that income to pay their real estate taxes and to pay their mortgages. If you are a property owner and you have a mortgage, one of the things that I've been hearing, that I've been suggesting that people do is to contact your lender and ask them. In many cases, the lenders are deferring your payments, that they're not excluding that you have to pay them, but they basically are tacking them on to the end of the mortgage, so that they'll give you a deferral for a couple of months to kind of get back up on your feet. But right now, it's really kind of having that conversation with your landlord to see what the situation is, if they can work with you. The worst thing you could do is ghost your landlord and then wind up in a legal battle with them.
To Linda's point, I think it's quite a complicated issue because there hasn't been clarity, but certainly I'm hearing it from both ends. I'm hearing it from the folks that are the tenants on retail strips or in strip malls or that can't make their rent or are concerned they can't make their rent. And I'm also hearing it from the larger property owners, and their property taxes and expenses haven't gone away. And so they need to make rent. And they're also concerned about long-term vacancy issues, right? If we know that businesses are going to close and businesses are going to go out of existence. So they're concerned about their viability long-term. And I think this is where there's some really good potential for government guidance. I think at the city level, there needs to be some really serious discussion about micro grants to cover some of these backed expenses. Certainly, as I mentioned before, the potential to cover rent for a month or two. I think that will be critically important. I know that Representative Max Rose, has been working on some things in the next stimulus bill, which there's intended to be a third CARES Act version, which may have some funding to support larger property owners that do have multiple tenants and are not getting revenue. And so I think that needs to just be a priority of both local and federal government to understand that this money isn't flowing as freely as it normally does, and there needs to be a remedy. And so I hope our leadership can take on this particular issue quite diligently.
Right now, there's not much guidance coming out, from the governor's office or from the city. All we're hearing is there's going to be a phased reopening for certain businesses. I have been trying to capture some of the ideas that have been generated through our membership to hear about specifically how they're doing. I actually got a whole slew of responses yesterday. I sent out an email asking, do you have plans for reopening and what do they look like? And what I'm seeing is a lot of the larger entities are hearing kind of from their corporate groups, but the smaller entities aren't. So we will be putting out information on that to be helpful to especially the small businesses, because it's not a one size fits all. And right now we're seeing very little guidance. There has been a group formed at the state level and a group formed at the city level, but there has been no guidance issued thus far.
Yeah, we are putting together, as I said, an email blast series that we'll be distributing. And if you want to receive those, go to the website, www.sidc.org, and sign up for our email list. Most of the work that we've been able to put together on this is a collaboration of the CDC guidelines, as well as some industry-specific items. You know, we're talking about some things like how to clean industrial vehicles or transportation vehicles as one sort of unique aspect. But I think where everyone needs to go and spend their time is really getting their sites prepared for frequent cleaning, making sure that, you know, folks have adequate access to masks and gloves and cleaning supplies, encouraging folks and demanding that their staff clean their laptops, clean their phones. Every surface that you touch should be diligently cleaned. I think that every business can do that, certainly without any government instruction or government rules. This is common sense. I think we all know about social distancing, but what does that mean in an office? Start thinking about less meetings, telecommuting, no essential travel, unessential travel. You don't have to do it. Also, think about, you know, public gatherings that you may host as a business. Those fundraisers and events that you do, can those be changed or downsized so that you're not risking people being infected? And so a lot of this stuff doesn't require government oversight. It's basic common sense, and that information will be forthcoming from SIEDC, utilizing some resources. But I also encourage everyone to also go to the CDC website. They have some really, really good practical information there as well.
And I think what Steve says about reimagining your business, I mean, that this is the time to really take a look inside out and see how do we perform our basic products and services? How do we work with the general public, with our customers? And I think that if you put into place strategies, with those CDC guidelines, which are pretty basic guidelines, you can use that as a starting point. And it is something where each individual business is going to have to see what works specifically for them.
So if you're a victim of crime, I think that it's questions about scams, but just if you're a victim of crime in general, yes, you should. If you believe you're a victim of crime, you should make a police report first.
Well, in any instance, that's the case. But you should always contact the local precinct when it's not an emergency. And file that 61 report.
By filing a 61 when you're the victim of a scam, what would happen would be, and usually it would make its way to the Staten Island Grand Larceny Squad. We have an excellent working relationship with them. They'll do all the background work that would need to be done before it could get to our office so that we could issue all the appropriate subpoenas and sort of streamline things. So by filing the 61, you sort of save yourself some time because they'll do all the background work before they ever bring it to us, so that when it's ready for a prosecution or an arrest or whatever the case may be, it will be done a lot more efficiently. We'll have all the paperwork, all the discovery, all the bank records, whatever the case may be that we need before you ever had to come to our office to begin with.
But there are a lot of things that happen before the actual crime is committed, right? So if you get a phishing scam on your email, if you get some phone calls, if things happen where you think a crime has been attempted, then you could also report that to us, to our community partnership unit, and also directly to Jeff and Gregg in the Economic Crimes Bureau, because we try to sort of catalog these things and look for patterns together with our partners in the Detectives Bureau to see if we can see patterns. Unfortunately, many of the sort of everyday attempts that we see come from overseas, and it's hard to prosecute them. But generally speaking, and as the Deputy Inspector said, if you think you've been a victim of a crime, please file a report. They will work with us to investigate that, and we will follow up as well.
And then said, if you've lost money in a scam, if we're specifically speaking about scams, if you've lost money in a scam, you should absolutely make a police report. You can also go on the Federal Trade Commission's website. It's ftc.gov, and there is a wealth of information. They also collect information about scam attempts, all on their website. I think since the beginning of the year, since the COVID situation started, they've had about 30,000 complaints from across the country about COVID-19 related scams, for instance. So if you want to find out more information, definitely go on their website as well. And you can find more information on our website under crime prevention also.